Hello, hello, it's Gina. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today we're going to talk about trees. So many people want to be able to draw trees, and I found a really simple way to get the point across that it's a tree without really having to draw. I know that sounds funny, but this is mostly scribbling. Personally, I like the effect. It may not be your kind of jam, but I like it. It would be great to use for cards and in your journals and stuff like that. I, of course, am working on bookmark size paper, but I thought that was just a fun way to practice these trees. So I thought we would do that today. As for backgrounds, I think I had seen a video or a little short from somebody and they just kind of put some paint down and did a drawing. I'm like, oh, that's a cute idea. And so I started there, and then I thought, well, let's put some ink around if you don't want it all white, but I'm not really crazy about that. And from there I graduated to just covering the entire background and not leaving any white. But it's still attractive and cute and I like it. But this is where my preference lies. And this one, I wanted to have a blue background, and so I did the tree first, and then I came in with the blue and added that. And for this style of tree, it was much easier to do that method rather than all the little scribbles and trying to get the blue in there. I did use permanent ink, so it shouldn't have been a problem just to put blue on it. But if you're not using a pen with permanent ink, this is your best shot. I have cut up some paper into bookmark size, so I thought we would do that today and just explore a couple of different ways to make trees. I hope you stick with me. Now let's get started. In case you did want to know, I'll be using my core paints, and for the brown, transparent brown oxide and burnt umber. And I'll be using a bigger brush, which we'll talk about in a minute, and they're right beside each other, and I really just kind of grab both, so it'll be a mixture of these two. The green is sap green, and then the yellow, what I tend to use is this Naples yellow, but I have used a variety of yellows. It just depends on how bright you want your yellow. So those are the colors that will be used. When you're covering surface and you're creating a background, you want a nice seamless blend. And to do that, your paper needs to remain wet enough for it to blend and not create a line. So use a bigger brush. This is an 11 round. This happens to be a squirrel mix by Zen Art, and that's what I'll use. But first I want to go ahead and get my colors. So I will wake up my paints. Get my brush good and wet, and my water is dirty just from painting these already. It's kind of a yellow-green looking color. But fresh water is always a great place to start. So now I will just put my brush, and like I said, I'm picking up both browns. I just laid it sideways, and there we go. You could even add a little bit of yellow in there if you want to lighten it up a little bit more. But we'll leave that for now. Now I'll bring in my sap green. And let's try some of this nickel azo yellow. I wanted to try that. Isn't that pretty? Very nice. So those are my three kind of fallish, woodsy colors. I am going to start with the brown. Just put it down here on the bottom. Now that really looks watered down, and I do want it darker because we know watercolor dries lighter, and that is not nearly dark enough for me. There we go. There's a lot of water, but let's just get it nice and dark down there. I might even go straight from my palette. There we go. So we smush that around. You see it's nice and wet. And from here, I'm going to go into my green. My sap green. And you can decide how much of each color you want. I usually leave the brown kind of small. It's going to represent the ground. And then I do the green. a fair distance up. Then I bring in the yellow. And when I bring in the yellow, I usually turn it around and I start at the top to keep it the lightest and brightest at the top. And then bring it down and then blend. Well, that's really a bright yellow, but it will fade as it dries. Now you can always go back in and think, well, that sap green is really kind of fading out already. So let's go in and add a little bit more color down at the bottom, and we can push it up. If you get a puddle, you can always tap it off. I'll dry off my brush because these hold so much water. But I'll come back in here and hit it with a little bit darker color. And then I just picked a little bit more back up. So there we go. All right. We will see how that one does. We'll lay that to the side to dry. We'll grab another one. And I'll just use that same process for all three. I may pull in some quinacridone gold, or maybe even this Naples yellow. So I'll complete these two and get back to you. All right, that's done. We'll let that dry and then we'll grab an ink pen and we can start working on our trees. While this is finishing to dry, let's talk paper. Now, normally I use bow hung paper. That's typically my go-to. That's what I do most of my videos using. But I thought I would be adventurous and try a new paper. So I recently ordered some Saunders Waterford 100% cotton paper. And bow hung is also 100% cotton. But I thought I would give this a try. This one comes in a block, like my bow hung. So it's glued all the way down, except for this little piece in the middle. And that's what I'm using today. So far, so good. I like it just fine. I don't know if this type of use is a very good way to test it as far as how it, how it feels. Like I'm not painting actual flowers and trying to manipulate things that way. I'm just putting on a wash, so it's not really a good way to test it as far as performance goes. So I won't be really commenting on that today. You can go ahead and go over them again. You don't have to take your first wash and leave it at that. If you aren't pleased with how it dried, or if it dries too light and you want it darker, add another layer. That's fine. Just wait till it dries and then you can go over the whole thing again if you like to. Looks like it has a little bit of a bloom there, which looks gorgeous. I love it. You don't always want blooms, but sometimes they really can enhance and give an interesting texture and just provide some interest to what you're doing. So to me, that works out really well. Also, these browns are really granulating, which really provides a lot of texture. So that is working for me as well. You can even see here in my palette where it's dried, look at the granulation. Look at how it's broken and separated. If you add water to that, it just, turns right back into your brown. It works for me, so I'm happy with it. All right, it's after lunch and I am back. My bookmarks have dried and the paper is a bit warped. So it's quite warped, actually. I'll probably continue to work with them like this for now, but when I'm done, what I'll probably do is flip them over and lightly spray them with a very fine mist of water and then lay something heavy on them. Maybe put a paper towel down, lay a book on them, something heavy for about an hour, and then when I come back they will be as perfectly flat as you would like. So, but for now I'm going to keep going. You can kind of bend and mold it with your fingers a little bit if it's really, really bad and you feel it will be disruptive while you're doing your inking. I'm going to be using the Banyo Microline pen, and it is waterproof and fade proof, light fast, and archival quality. And if you're not going to apply any color on top, it probably doesn't even matter what type of pen you use. Okay, so I have coined a couple of terms for some of these scribbles. And the first one I'm going to show you is the line scribble or long scribble. I don't know about you, but sometimes if I don't kind of give myself a guide, my tree starts to veer and look kind of funky. Which trees do in nature, right? But if you're trying to draw one, unless you really want it to lean, generally people want them straight. So to give myself a helping hand, I'm going to just figure out where I want it to start and just give kind of a rough idea of where my center will be. Okay, so that's about the middle. So now I'm going to do what's called the long or line scribble. I'm going to start at the top and I'm just going to make long, long scribbles. Start in the middle and just start fanning out and working your way down. I must use the by 03 nib a lot because it doesn't seem to want to come out. Okay, there we go. It's coming out thinner than an 03 really should be. Let me switch to the 04. Okay, yeah, this one's packing a little bit more ink to it. All right. So I'm basically starting in the center where my line is, and I'm just swooshing out. Swooshing's a word, right? And just try to make the strokes longer and longer the farther down you go. And have an idea about where you want the bottom to stop. So do you want a tree, like a Christmas tree, that comes all the way down where you don't really see the trunk? Or do you want to have some trunk showing? I've been kind of digging the having the trunk showing. So since my brown is down here, I want to stop my tree somewhere over here. So you scribble and you scribble. You draw your lines, getting wider and wider. And when you get at the bottom, just start creating the base of your tree, where you just kind of draw it out and have it fan out and then cover the straight down in the bottom. Okay, and I left some of that out, so I will move back up. Keep the top kind of pointy if you want. You can fan them out and have them curl like this. You can have them just come straight down. There's lots of poetic license involved here. You can make your trees however you want. If it looks like you have some bare spots, just go in and darken them. Trees don't just have branches come out to the side, right? They're coming towards you. So you can always do just some shorter ones in the front. Kind of like you did at the base, where you went all the way around. You can go all the way around in all levels of your tree. Okay. And you just kind of keep tweaking it and adding little lines until it becomes the shape and fullness that you like, that appeals to you. Do my bottom about right here, and I'm just going to lightly draw a line to where I think it would be. Lightly draw a line, and then I'll fill it in. Just draw just straight lines down is what I've been doing, just to represent some bark. Maybe go a little bit harder on the outside edge just to give it a nice defined shape. And there you go. Next up we have a hard scribble. Figure out where my top is. I'm going to draw, give myself a guide. This one, you're really doing more of a typical scribble. And actually, I think I will use I want to try 02. Because I've done them using a heavier nib, but for some reason the smaller nib looks better. It takes a little longer because the nib is smaller and you're having to scribble more to get the fullness that you're looking for. But in the end, I think it gives a better overall look. So I'm down to an 02. And this is just a hard scribble. Where before was doing long strokes. These are just short, like scribble. This is a straight up scribble stroke. And all my favorite ones are running out. Oh my gosh. All right, well, I'll go back to I might have to go back to the number 4. I'll try to just do it lightly because there's something about the smaller nib that just looks better, I think. But okay, let's... And the scribbles get longer and a little bit longer the farther down I go. Okay, and remember where you want your bottom to be, you just start scribbling all the way around. Okay, I'm a better scribbler on the left than I am on the right, so this part should be a little easier. Just feels more natural to me. Okay, and again, see right now it looks like there's a seam right down the middle. And we can get rid of that by just scribbling all over in all directions. But you could just do the whole tree that way. But to me it's a little easier if I get my outline, my parameters set first, and then I can come in and fill in the middle. So you can, if you need to even it up, if you're looking at it, you're like, okay, I've got longer branches on this side than I do on this side, then you can adjust. You can have some little pieces kind of flailing out, because that's looks a little more natural, I think. Figure out where your middle is, and you can even maybe carry it right down the middle to where you want the base of your trunk to be. And then you can draw on each side. And I just add lines going straight down for the bark. We can add a little bit of ground. We need to do that on this one too. So you don't want it floating in the air. There we go. Just scribble your tree on out. There you go. So we have the long line scribble and we have the hard scribble. Next, which is probably my favorite, is called the spastic scribble. If you have a bit of a shaky hand, then this is probably one you'll like a lot. I'm going back to try the number 2 for this one. This one takes just a little bit longer, because you're doing each individual line. You're not scribbling quickly. You're kind of spastically letting your pen just wobble and weave all over the place and create these really abnormal looking lines. I'm partial to the skinny tree look for this one. I start down and I usually hold my pen a little bit farther back. I'm not choked up way up here where I'm needing to control my pen. I don't really want to control it, so I'm scooting back, but close enough to where I can still put pressure down on my nib. And I'm just kind of weeble wobbling. I'm not sure even how to describe it. I just let it just kind of go jagged and wonky, and it just jigs and jags. And try to keep an eye. See, already I'm starting to veer this way. I got to keep an eye on my middle. I'll need to make it darker so I can even see it. Okay, so yeah, here's my middle, and so just I do just scratches and zigzags kinda, and just, yeah, it just goes crazy. Here, let me bring you in so you can get a good look at what my pen is doing. All right, let's see. Yep, so it's just, yeah, I mean, look at that. I was just making really random little scratches. Comes out, it goes up. It goes up and down. I come down and do some more. You're like, okay, there's hardly any branches on this tree. It looks pretty sad. But you don't have to leave it like that. And also, see where it looks like it's going this way, then this way, and wobbles. You can definitely go back and fix that. You can always widen that, okay, as it goes down. So you can make the trunk a little more central if you've kind of gone off in one direction, as long as you don't go off too far. So I'm going to go back in and just try to straighten up my center line so that it looks like it's somewhat straight. But trees aren't always straight, so as long as it's not too terribly bad, don't worry too much about it. And you can add even other branches coming off of the ones you've already scribbled, so you don't have to start and bring in more from the trunk. You can just add some branches based off the ones you've already done. If you want it to come out more at the bottom, you can do that. Okay. You're just scribbling. So you can come back and you can add a couple more trees so he's not there all alone. Let's do that. Let's add another one right here. There's a little tree there. And it's always good to add one more. It always looks better in odd numbers, so we won't leave it at 2 trees. We'll add another tree over here. There you go. You can add some little birds up in the sky. Just doing like little V's. Flying around. Isn't that nice? Nice little scene. I love that. Let's see, this one. Should we put a bird? Oh, we could put a couple of birds in the sky here too. There we go. Look, I almost put them in exactly the same spot. That must be my favorite place to put birds. And here, now you can have one sitting on a tree. Now, sometimes these turn out good and sometimes they don't. So let's see. I'll make a little bird shape, a little tail, a little head, a little beak. There we go. There we go. Oh, he's cute. Sitting on top of the tree. He shows up really good with that bright yellow background. All right, I'll show you one more, and that will be this type, which I call the sectional scribble, because I'm just scribbling in different sections. Self-explanatory. So you figure out where you want to start at the top, and you just kind of scribble in a triangle shape. And try to keep it roughly, you know, the same length at the bottom, and then you come down. You start a little bit inside, and then you go farther out. Scribble, and then you start in, and you just keep adding sections, and usually they get longer and longer as I scribble, like the scribble lines get longer. It starts kind of short and then it gets long, Come back here. Now these are kind of loops if you're looking. It's not just straight lines. I'm kind of just scribbling with making sort of loops. And there's some pieces that are left, and that's okay. I'll see if I like that still whenever I get done. I might have room for one more. I started getting wide kind of fast, whereas this one I took a much more narrow approach and I was able to go farther. This might have to have a long trunk to it though. We'll do one more. I don't think I can go any wider without it going off the edges, so I'll leave it there. And then I will just make a long, let's see, where's my center, roughly. So roughly my center is here. So I'll go on each side. Okay. And again, don't want our tree to float, so we'll draw some ground. And I might sharpen up just the outside edge. Now, if one side, like I tend to go longer on the left and kind of shorter on the right, so you might want to go back and make some adjustments if you've done that. Alright, so I am going to use a little smaller brush for my tree. And I'll get some more sap green. And you don't have to fill in everywhere, just to give it a little bit of color. In between, like see that white space? There you go. Yeah, I seem to do better pulling toward me than pushing away. So I did flip this upside down so that I can pull the color or the brush toward me. And there's some that went down below that doesn't have a scribble by it, but that, you know, that's fine. I mean, it's a scribble tree, so no stress here. How about some Van Dyke brown this time? Here we go. Here we are. And we can do the ground a little bit as well. Rinsed off my brush and I'm just going to spread it around. Before I do the background, I'm going to let this dry. Alright, everything is dry. So for my background, I'm going to bring in my large brush again. And I'm going to mix up plenty of the blue that I want to use for the sky. And what I'll probably do is just do a combination of the cobalt blue and the cobalt teal. Maybe a little bit more teal to keep it light. And you want to mix plenty because you don't want to run out when you're doing your background. Because it'll start to dry before you can get more mixed up and then it won't look right. So try to make sure you have plenty. I'm just going to start swiping. I'm going to try to stay away from the green because it's dry, but still I would rather not activate it. The ink should be waterproof. It said it was. Oh, can't hold on to it. Okay. There we go. And probably better to lay it flat because I keep losing my grip. It's still quite wet, so I'm able to go back over it without causing any problems. Alright, looks like I might have swiped down here with the blue. That's okay. We'll let that dry and then we'll come back and take a look. Okay, not bad. Seems like I was a little sloppy with my blue. I could tell it looks like I went over, which I don't remember doing, but apparently I did. I went over my trunk some right there, which kind of just looks like a shadow. It's not bad. But it also went over some of the bottom and the top. So I'm wondering if I should maybe do a second coat on this one. I have my Naples yellow here, and I think I'm just going to see about just adding a little bit of yellow. Alright, so there. That really brightened up the green, didn't it? You can still see where the blue is right here. I'm thinking I may do a blue wash over everything, except for the ground. Alright, my tree is dry, and I have mixed up more of the cobalt blue and cobalt teal. And I'm just going to apply it all over. I don't really want it super dark, so maybe I'll add more water. This a little bit lighter. There we go. And we'll just do like a glaze. How's that? There you go. How about that? I'm going to let that dry. All right, it's dry now. I'm looking, I may go over and make this just a little bit darker, at least in some spots. I didn't really get into shadows and shading, and of course you can do that. But if you're just wanting to do something quick and make a cute little scribble tree, that's all I'm really covering today. So there is your sectional scribble tree. So there I've shown you 4 different types of scribbles you can do to make trees. You got the long line scribble, the hard scribble, the spastic scribble, and the sectional scribble. I hope this makes you want to pick up your pen and grab a piece of paper and just start scribbling trees. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, I'd love to hear from you. Give me a like and leave a comment. And that's it for this one. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.